Hey, thank you so much for clicking on this video. My name is Kaylee, and this is Read Rant Review, where, you guessed it, I read books and I do rant reviews. I give you a beat by beat, chapter by chapter breakdown of a crazy book that you guys voted for. This past week, you guys voted for The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. In all honesty, it was between three Frida McFadden books, and the other ones will be coming shortly on the channel. She, if for some reason you have been living under a rock, is one of the top selling thriller novelists of the last couple of years. And so I wanted to unpack her work for a couple of reasons that we'll talk about in this video and in the future ones. But today we're going to be talking about The Housemaid, the book that started it all. The Housemaid was published in 2022. It has 329 pages, and currently, at the time of filming, being 6 October 2025, it's sitting at a 4.25 with over 2.7 million ratings and a movie deal in the works. I believe they're actually filming and whatnot at this very moment. Probably not, but maybe. Who am I to say? So crazy in popularity. We're going to talk about what this book is, what happens. Stick around. Hope you enjoy it. I have a couple of disclaimers before we dive in. It's the same that I have on all of my videos in case you are new and unfamiliar. The first disclaimer being that this review will contain all of the spoilers. Like I said, it is a beat by beat, chapter by chapter breakdown. Do not continue if you want to read this or watch this on your own. The second disclaimer being that this review is not for the author, nor is it for friends, fans, family, or stans. I will be critiquing this book pretty heavily, cracking some jokes, having a laugh. If this is something that you, for some reason, are very, very passionate or loving of, I'll see you in the next one, okay? Don't go defending a millionaire in my comments. I am but some random woman on the internet, okay? Don't make it weird. And the third and final disclaimer is a content or trigger warning that I like to put on my videos so that you know what we're getting into. I will not be providing one on this video because it's a thriller. A lot of the content and trigger warnings are part of the twists and the surprises and the you know what I mean? The vibe of the book. So I will give you a viewer discretion is advised, and I would tell you that if this were any other traditional romance or other book typically on the channel, that the trigger and content warning list would be fairly extensive. So if you're concerned about that, I do recommend you looking it up, but I will not be providing it, okay? So with that, I am going to read you the book description and we'll dive right in, okay? Sorry. Sorry. The book's not funny. What I'm about to say after is though, okay? Every day, I clean the Winchesters' beautiful house, top to bottom. I collect their daughter from school. I cook a delicious meal for the whole family before heading up to eat alone in my tiny room on the top floor. I try to ignore how Nina makes a mess just to watch me clean it up, how she tells strange lies about her own daughter, and how her husband Andrew seems more broken every day. But as I look into Andrew's handsome brown eyes, so full of pain, it's hard not to imagine what it would be like to live Nina's life. The walk-in closet, the fancy car, the perfect husband. I only try on one of Nina's pristine white dresses once. Sorry. I only try on one of Nina's pristine white dresses once, just to see what it's like. But she soon finds out, and by the time I realize my attic bedroom door only locks from the outside, it's far too late. But I assure myself, the Winchesters don't know who I really am. They don't know what I'm capable of. And I'm not gonna lie, we just had the entire book spoiled for us in the book description. Any twist, any if I hope you're watching visually because I can't put a word to the hand motion that I'm making. Any je ne sais quoi. Any vibe or iota of tension that like maybe you would have felt through the book. I just told it to you in the book description, okay? So like that kind of sucks, but that's kind of how the entire writing is. That's how the entire experience of this book is. I'm not going to lie to you. And I'm going to go on a side tangent for like 3 to 5 minutes that will make me sound like a pretentious douchebag, okay? I am fully acknowledging that, okay? Let's all like be real with each other right now. Everything I'm about to say will make me sound like a dick, but it's needed to be heard and understood, okay? Frida McFadden is to the thriller genre what Colleen Hoover is to the romance genre. I.e., what I mean is both of their writing is very easy, short, basic sentence structures. It's very easy to understand. It's very easy to consume, and they don't leave anything to the imagination. Anytime that either of these authors builds up any type of tension or questioning or like, a moment for the reader's imagination to run wild of like, oh my God, what could it mean? You like read the next sentence and it tells you exactly what they mean and exactly what the writer wants you to know. Well, that's not very cool, in my opinion. I like mystery. I like having to think for myself and like piece things together, and like reading it more than one time will reveal more and more things, right? I want every reading experience or like rereading of a book to give me a new experience. If I read something and then you tell me exactly what I'm to expect in the next chapter or two, why should I keep reading your book? You just told me what's about to happen. Like there's no tension. There's no like, you know what I mean? There's no air of mystery, and it's easily digestible, like I said. And it's very easily read. It's very easily consumable by the masses. I understand why these authors are so important, and they serve a purpose, right? It makes, again, like I said, accessible. It makes reading accessible to the masses, which is critically important. But it's also critically important to think critically and to have to flex those muscles in your brain that makes you piece things together and think and like remember and predict and blah blah blah. And these are all like very, very important skills that I feel like are atrophying in the average reader, because these authors are like, well, I don't want somebody to miss my point. No, they should. Some people should miss your point. Some people should miss your point and be forced to join book clubs and talk to other human beings and engage in these like outside experiences. Or I think it's important, especially in terms of thrillers. I think there's like this air of imagination that makes things more scary. And I don't get that from Frida. It's so straightforward. And anytime, again, that there was a fraction, a sprinkling of like, oh my God, that's crazy, it got shattered in the very next sentence. And so with that being said, today's rant review, today's read rant review video will be different than the norm, because I'm not going to necessarily be going chapter by chapter. For one, because it's so predictable and whatever that it would be, I feel, in my personal opinion, more entertaining if I just informally yap to you about it. And also, secondly, there's like 60 plus chapters in this book. And if you think that I'm going to count to 60, no. No, I am not. No, that would get so annoying. Me, as like, let me put on my like editing Kaylee cap, would quit, okay? We're not playing that game at all, okay? So I'm just going to yap to you about this book. I'm not going to read you hardly any quotes. I'll read enough quotes to you so you understand what I mean about like how, to me personally, infuriating the sentence structure was in this book, and like how much I was like hitting my head and I was like, oh my freaking God. Okay. Can we just like move on, please? Okay. I might read some of those to you, but it's not going to be the normal video. So thanks. Let's dive right in. Our book opens with a prologue of a woman in her house, very ritzy, very rich. Don't worry, they're very, very clear to explain to us how bougie this home is. There are cops in the house going upstairs to the attic, and the woman is like, oh my God, I'm going to be arrested the second that they find what's up there. Dun, dun, dun. Cliffhanger, right? So that's how we begin. And you say, I'm buckled in. Let's hear what we have to say. And so we go into chapter 1 of the book, and we get the perspective 3 months earlier from Millie, which is Wilhelmina Calloway. She has recently been released from prison. She's living out of her car and she's trying to move on with life. We don't find out until part 2 in the book of what she was in prison for, but we find out pretty immediately, so I'm not like ruining it for you. But she is a recently released prisoner who is just trying to make do. Find work. And she's having a lot of problems with this because anytime anybody finds out that she is a convict, that she's a felon, they don't call her back for anything. And so she's been living out of her car, and it's been a very, very difficult transition for her. On this particular day, she has an interview with Nina Winchester. Nina Winchester is about a decade older than her, right? Nina's in her mid-30s, and she is this very, very rich woman living on the rich side of town, has this wonderful house, and she is looking for a housemaid, right? She's looking for a cleaner. She's looking for someone to pick up the daughter from school and just kind of keep the house functioning. So Millie shows up to this interview wearing Miss Congeniality-esque frumpy clothing and non-prescription glasses so that she in theory looks uglier than she is, so that she doesn't pose a threat to this housewife. Okay, off the bat, we got some pick me energy that just rubbed me the wrong way really, really badly, right? So she shows up for this interview. Nina's very nice to her, compliments her glasses, invites her in the home. It's very, very cool. House is beautiful. It's gorgeous, immaculate. And Millie is just so incredibly excited because this would be an absolutely wild turn of events for her, right? And not only is this opportunity, it pays well, but it also offers housing, right? You get to live in the house that you clean, which is a ginormous deal for Millie, who is currently living out of her car. In addition to talking about the, position and the description and whatever, kind of what the expectations are and outlining that, Nina takes Millie to the living quarters, which happens to be up in essentially the attic. Compared to the rest of the house, this room is dark. It's dingy. There's a twin mattress, a mini fridge, but it does have a bathroom across the hall. Very different vibe from the rest of the house. But hey, a bed is a bed. A roof over your head is a roof over your head. She's not asking for much. But there's something about this room that immediately gives Millie bad vibes. And she can't really pinpoint exactly what it is, but she kind of sucks it up and goes on about her way. And on the way out, as they're continuing to discuss this job, they run into the daughter, right? Who Nina will be expecting Millie to pick up from school and just kind of generally keep an eye on and take care of. Her name is Cecilia. And she gives off big Children from the Shining vibes. And if you're too young to know that reference, then get off my channel. I'm kidding, but I'll read you the quote. She's staring at me like she can see right through me, right through my soul. Do you know those movies about the scary cult of creepy kids who can read minds and worship the devil and live in cornfields or something? Well, if they were casting for one of those movies, this girl would get the part. They wouldn't even have to audition her. They would take one look at her and be like, yes, you are creepy girl number 3. Is there something wrong with me that I'm scared of this 9-year-old girl and thinking that she's going to murder me? I'd say that there's at least a 25% chance that she's going to murder me in my sleep if I get this job, but I still want it. And so she okay, right? Hey, as far as I'm concerned, bad first impression. As far as Millie's concerned, this is great. Between a creepy ass child in the weird, uncomfortable, very living quarters situation, Millie is under the impression that they have to be desperate to find somebody to hire, right? And she's like, oh, there's no way they're going to find anybody else. They're going to have to hire me. This will be great. Everything's going to work out awesome. And so Millie doesn't hear anything for an entire week. In the meantime, she's been interviewing at a bunch of fast food restaurants and trying to, again, just get by. Not working out well. Literally everybody has called her back with bad news. We found somebody else. The position's been filled, blah, blah, blah. She's starting to give up hope until the point that Nina does call her back and offers her the housekeeping job. She's stunned, surprised, amazed by this. At this point, she had like completely given up on it. And instead, Nina says, hey, you're hired, and also come as soon as you possibly can. To which Millie says, I will literally be there tomorrow morning, which is great news for everybody, like across the board, right? Nina's very excited. Millie's very excited. But when Millie hangs up, she's thinking to herself, I wonder how Nina would feel if she knew that I spent the last 10 years in prison. So she shows up the next day, again, incredibly excited to begin work and all these other things. But when she gets there, the gate is locked, and so she can't get up to the house, and she ends up flagging one of the gardeners, and his name is Enzo, and I swear to God I had like PTSD flashbacks to Does It Hurt by H.D. Carlton. God bless you, Natalie, for also doing a rant review on it. I don't know how we survived, to be honest. So terrible, terrible book. So anytime I read Enzo now, I just think of that freaking crazy shark boy, man, Italian. And this guy's Italian too. I guess with a name like Enzo. You know what? We're not unpacking it. So anyway, she runs into the gardener. Italian, does not speak English, but she tries to kind of flirt with him because he's a little hottie-toddy with a banging body. And she's like, oh my God, like, and he's like, no English. She's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, can you like let me in the house? So he does. But he ends up ranting to her in Italian, and he ends their conversation on this one sentence. And all she gets out of it is the word pericolo, which I'm probably slaughtering, but it means danger in Italian. We'll learn that later in the chapter. I'm just telling you now just to get it over with. But she's like, that's weird. I wonder what that means. And then she goes into the house, and she is greeted by a horrific mess. Like last week when she was there, it was immaculate. It was spotless. It was amazing. She gets there this time. There's trash everywhere. The dishes are piled a mile high. There's like stuff on the coffee table that like is like impossible to get off. Literally, whenever she does get around to cleaning this room in like 2 or 3 chapters from now, it takes her 7 freaking hours, right? Destroyed. And she's like, oh my God. So Nina greets her. Nina, tells her to kind of get to work about it. But before she does, she gives a new iPhone because Millie had previously had a flip phone. Nina said, I saw you using that. Not a reliable form of communication. Here's this phone for you to use. Score, right? And it's on their phone plan, so Millie doesn't have to pay for it, which is even freaking better. At this point, she also meets the husband. His name is Andrew. He's like the breadwinner of the family, and immediately, again, we get this like pick-me-ass energy where he walks in the room, and Millie is like, oh my God, he is so handsome. He's handsome, and he's rich, and he's like just got it together. I don't know why he's with somebody like Nina. Like, he's like so out of her league. To which I'm like, bitch. Like, whole time I just wanted to fight this woman. There was not a single time in this entire book that I was ever rooting for the main female character. Honest to God, I wasn't rooting for anybody. At no point in this book did I enjoy the experience of anyone, okay? But we'll get there. So anyway, Andrew, he's there. He's polite to her. He's surprised by her presence, but, Nina reminds him that she talked about hiring a maid, and he's like, oh, yeah, that's cool. And he goes off to work. Or does God knows what? I don't know. He leaves. And she's going to clean a whole bunch, and then she's going to cook dinner, and everything's going to be great. After this introduction, Nina takes Millie up to the attic to put her things up there. And a couple more weird things come to light. The little mini fridge that was in there, she opens it, and there's 3 little bottles of water. And she's like, oh, odd. And Nina says, hey, hydration's important. And then she realizes why the room is weird to her. And it's because the lock is on the outside of the door. Like, you could get locked in the room. And so she brings this up to Nina, and Nina's like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. It used to be a closet, but I'll get you a key for it. The key is not the problem. Like, if I'm inside of my room and I'm locked in here, you giving me a key is not helpful. What do you mean? What good is that going to do? That doesn't solve anything. Completely ignores it. Just says, oh, okay, awesome. And goes on about like unpacking her clothes while Nina runs off to a PTA meeting, or a parent-teacher association, because Millie had no idea what that word meant. Right? So she's part of the PTA. Of course she's a PTA mom. No disrespect, but you know what I'm talking about. Like, it's a very, like, cliche archetype person that I have in my head when I say PTA mom like that. You know what I'm trying to say. So she goes to leave, shuts the door, and Millie shuts the door to have a little bit of privacy. And when she closes the door, she looks down and realizes that there's scratches on the door. There's scratches on the door, almost like somebody was trying to escape. And the book says that, by the way, verbatim. The book, like, immediately, that's the sentences. I'm not even going to pull it up because that's literally what it says. I don't need to quote it to you, but that's the kind of thing that I'm saying. There's nothing left to the imagination. Why didn't you just tell me there were scratches in the door? You didn't have to tell me, like, somebody was trying to escape. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. What do you mean? Why? Again, that's like the air of mystery to, like, let the reader fill in some blanks here, dude. So she sees this and she's like, eesh. Okay, so the lock outside of the door and there's claw marks on the inside of the door. And she goes to the little tiny window, like a little attic window thing, right? And realizes you can't even open it because it's painted shut. Oh, cool. And she looks out the window and she sees the little garden and she sees Enzo. Enzo's back there gardening, obviously, or landscaping or doing whatever. And he looks up and he sees her in the window and he just, like, shakes his head. Cool. So she pulls out her new iPhone. Do they say iPhone directly? I hope this woman got paid. I think they do say, hold on, does it say iPhone? Yeah. Okay. I hope Frida McFadden got a cut for that advertisement. Anyway, so she pulls it out, she looks it up, and she looks at Pericolo. She looks up the word and finds out that it means danger. Cool. So none of this stops her. None of this leads her to run away. I mean, again, I understand, right? She's in a vulnerable position. She just got out of prison. She's having a hard time, right? I get it. She's in a vulnerable position. She's having a hard time finding a job. She's freshly out of prison. There's, like, the world is kind of working against her to a certain degree, right? Completely understand, respect, whatever, do what you got to do to survive. However, it sure seems like this situation is getting set up for you not to survive. So I'm not sure at what point, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Hey, I don't know. So when we go into chapter 4, she spends the next 7 hours cleaning and getting the house together. And when she's down there cleaning, Celia, the daughter, there's home, and Nina are home. They're just, like, doing whatever somewhere else in the house, like, while she's cleaning. And when she's in the kitchen taking care of stuff, Celia comes in and asks for a snack. And so she makes her a snack. She puts some little Ritz crackers, a little cut up banana, and some peanut butter. Gets these little sandwiches going, these little cracker snacks. Gives them to Celia. Celia freaks the frick out. She's like, oh my God, you're trying to kill me. I'm allergic to peanut butter. Why would you do that? Ah! Nina comes downstairs and Nina's like, what the frick, Millie? Are you trying to kill my daughter? What's going on? And she's like, I don't know. I didn't know she was allergic to peanut butter. And Nina says, yeah, you did. I told you. I told you explicitly. She's like deathly allergic to peanut butter. And Millie is just sitting there and she's like, okay, yes, ma'am. Like, there's no point in arguing with you. Obviously, you're psychotic and you're not listening to me. So let me just, like, sorry, it won't happen again. And is internally thinking, why in the hell do you have a jar of peanut butter at the very, very front of your pantry if she's deathly allergic? Like, that doesn't even make any sense. As Nina, takes her daughter to go and console her elsewhere, she asks Millie how long it'll be until dinner time. Millie says 3 hours, and we got into chapter 5, 6:45 p.m. Andrew gets home from work. Dinner's almost ready. It smells delicious. The house is immaculate. He's happy as a clam, and he hugs and greets his wife with love, and it's very, very cute. He compliments Millie's food, and immediately after the compliment, Millie kind of picks up Nina's, like, attitude shift or, like, you know what I mean, vibe shift after that, and, like, oh, okay, so he can't talk to me because obviously there's, like, some weird tension here, and she's really, really jealous of me. This is just, like, not very good. And so when he goes on to invite her to dinner, like, invites Millie to eat dinner with them, she at least has enough ability to read a room to say no, and that she'll just go and eat up in her bedroom. She goes up there, she eats, immediately passes out, like the second her head hits a pillow, because again, she's been sleeping in her car. Now she's in a comfortable house, she's on a bed. It might be a twin size bed, it might be a little small, might be a little rickety, might smell a little moldy up here, but it is a roof over her head and a pillow under it, right? So she passes the frick out. And when she wakes up early in the morning, she has to use the restroom, understandably. So she tries to go out, pulls on the door, and it's not opening. Day one, by the way. Day one of sleeping there, and you're already being locked in your room? Couldn't be me. So she's like, okay, cool. At least I can call 911. So she goes, grabs her phone off the bed, tries to dial 911, realizes she has no service in this room. Huh. Cool. Goes to open up the door again, and this time it does pop open. And she's relieved that this opens and, you know, everything's fine, and maybe she just like pulled on it weird, or there was just something funky, maybe it just got like stuck, but she just can't shake the feeling that she should get out of the house as soon as possible. You don't say. When she does like get everything together and she goes downstairs and she shows up to the kitchen, she finds Nina destroying it, like yanking everything out of every cupboard, flipping the freaking fridge inside out, just throwing shit everywhere, completely destroying what was, as of last night, this immaculately cleaned kitchen. And she's like, hey, what's going on? And Nina accuses her of stealing her PTA list that she had made, and that, you know, Millie is sabotaging her and like ruining her blah, 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 and like took her list. And Millie's like, I didn't. I maybe possibly could have thrown it away if it was like a crumpled piece of paper or something, but like I didn't do anything intentionally, and I'm pretty sure that I didn't. And before they can get into more of this tiff, Andrew comes downstairs because of the commotion, and he's like, what's going on? Nina's like, oh my God, this crazy woman, she's just throwing all my stuff away and she's ruining my life. And Andrew's like, okay, babe, I'm sure it's on the computer though, like just go print it out. She's like, you don't understand, there was so much more on it, and blah, 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 and just like, you know, in distress. But she listens to him and she goes upstairs, and like on her way out of the kitchen, on Nina's way out, she's like, clean up this disgusting mess. Yes, ma'am. And so the second that she leaves, right, it's just the two, it's Andrew and Millie left in the kitchen, and she tries to explain to Andrew, and she's like, hey, I didn't, you know, I'm sorry, blah, 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 goes on to try and like defend herself, and Andrew's like, no, it's just, she's high strung, okay, I know how she is, like, don't worry about it, like, I'm sorry, like, let me help you clean up. And she continues to deny him, you know, she's like, hey, this is literally what I get paid for, you know, I don't worry about it. And he's like, okay, cool. Well, just, I do appreciate all of your hard work. And she leaves to go and get groceries. And when she returns, she runs into Enzo in the back area of the house. And she tries to catch him to ask him what he meant by the danger word. And he ends up helping her bring some groceries into the house. He's not really answering any of her questions, but, you know, kind of seems like maybe he's about to start to say something when he hears a noise and like makes a run for it. Okay. Weird. The noise that he heard was Nina. So Nina comes into the kitchen, she sees all the groceries, and asks Millie if she had company over. And she's like, oh yeah, the Enzo guy, you know, he just helped me bring in some stuff. And Nina's like, no, like her whole attitude changes. And she's like, I do not want that man in this house. Oh, okay. Millie thinks that she's just kind of being like a, like she doesn't want the dirty gardener in here. Okay, Beezy. Wouldn't be surprised after she was already so rude to her this morning, right? So she's just like kind of on one. Ends up confronting her. Nina asks her where her glasses are, and she comes clean about how they weren't prescription glasses in any way. And Nina yet again gets on one, and she's like, "Don't you ever lie to me again. Clean up this mess. What? Clean up this mess. There's nothing. Like, it's already clean. She already cleaned it earlier. This lady's just raging, right?" And she storms out of the kitchen to go to the PTA meeting thing that she was looking for the notes for earlier. And so in the meantime, Millie stays home. She's cooking dinner for Andrew and Celia. And Celia comes downstairs, and she is acting like a brat. She's asking for apple juice, and then she doesn't want it, and she like throws it on the ground, and then she asks for water, and just like completely bossing Millie around and just being a completely like entitled, spoiled brat. When Andrew comes down We learn a little bit more about Millie because she's reflecting on how handsome he is and how she hasn't been with a man in so long and how she had gone to prison when she was 17. And then she's like thinking of Enzo and she's like, oh, maybe I can, relieve some stress with him. She ended up cooking like steak that night. Andrew's so happy with the way that it turned out, but Celia's, again, little picky girly, and asks for some chicken nuggets. And then he's like, no, don't worry, Millie, I'll make it, because she's very particular about like XYZ. It's like, okay, cool, whatever. And then he invites her to dinner again. She again says no. And it's just kind of awkward. And she goes back up to her little attic room and goes to bed. And a week after working there, Millie feels like it's literally been forever. It has been a completely miserable experience. Nina is unpredictable, like her ups and downs and her moods are all over the place. Celia is, again, just this like completely entitled, spoiled brat. And Andrew is the most tolerable member, right? Like he's always very, very polite and kind to her, but he's never home. One of these times during the week, Nina brings down a trash bag full of white clothes of hers that she was going to donate, but she decides to give them to Millie instead. So now she has these like really nice clothes, right? Because it's all a little too small for Nina, right? She's gained a little bit of weight. And then also she reveals that they're trying to get pregnant and that they've been trying for a while and they have an appointment with a specialist soon. And then Nina also gives Millie the key to the room, to her room. I don't know. Again, still such a weird situation to me, but that's fine. Whatever makes you happy, I suppose. Out of the blue, and again, like time is just passing, right? Time's just flying. Days are going by, right? So on this particular day, randomly, she gets a phone call from Nina instructing her to pick up Celia from school. She doesn't tell her when. She doesn't tell her where. She has no idea where she goes to school at or how the pickup works or anything like that. And so Millie begins to like frantically call Nina back to figure out what the heck is going on. Radio silent, completely ignores all of her calls. Luckily, she's able to kind of piece it together based off of like a calendar that they had on the fridge, figures out what school she's going to, and goes to show up, right? Ends up in the line of all the PTA moms, or of all of the moms waiting for the kids to come out. Celia sees her, and then she's like, what are you doing here? On, Tuesdays, I go with my friend to this, lesson that we have. And she's like, your mom told me to be here. And the other mom that's there, she's like, no, seriously, yeah, every Tuesday we take her to go to this class thing. I don't know why, I don't know why Nina would send you here. That's like so weird. And then she hears whisperings between all these little mom gossipy girls that are saying how Nina is nuts. And so Millie goes home pondering over this idea of Nina being nuts and what exactly that like means. And along the way too, she ends up calling Nina and like confirming. And Nina's like, what do you mean? I didn't tell you to pick up Celia today. What are you talking about? You got it all mixed up. Like, you're so stupid. Why would you even be there right now? Oh, this bitch is crazy. Right, is Millie's reaction to all of this. And also the names Millie and Nina, way too close for comfort for telling a story like this. I hate that so much. For me personally, as a storyteller, I'm like struggling so hard right now. And so with this idea kind of like percolating in the back of her head, she goes looking through the bathroom cabinets one morning and she finds a medicine called haloperidol. My husband, by the way, his spidey senses just tingled at me saying that because he literally just texted me. I'm going to say it's because I just slaughtered that word so bad that his spidey senses freaked the frick out about me slaughtering a medicine name. So yeah, haloperidol, sure. And a couple of others. She looks it up online and she discovers that these are used to treat illnesses like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. So she's like, oh, okay, interesting. On one of the days, she is cleaning the house and she looks outside and she spots Enzo in the garden. And so she gets a glass of water to go and bring it out to him, right? Because again, she's going to try and put on the moves to hook up with this, little hottie toddy. And also, she kind of wants to get some more information on Nina and the Winchesters in general. And he says that he's worked for them for 3 years, and then he goes completely silent and doesn't answer any of her questions the second that she brings up Nina specifically. So that's not looking very good for her. 3 weeks into working for the Winchesters, Millie has her first meeting with her parole officer since being released. It's a pretty like mild discussion with her parole officer telling her that she is proud of her for the new job and the new housing arrangement, and that it's going to be really important for her to have some human connection. And so she encourages her to make some friends and start dating again, and how like critical that is for her, you know, kind of like integration back into society and growth as a person and all this other stuff. Like her parole officer is very supportive of everything, right? And so immediately she's like, oh, I need to make friends. I need to have a relationship. She starts thinking of Andrew. Do you see why this character is played by Sydney Sweeney? And so that night she can't sleep. And so she ends up going downstairs to watch some TV. And Andrew ends up wandering down in the middle of the night to get a glass of water, and he ends up watching some TV with her. They're just bonding in the night in the living room together, and his midnight snack of choice is the jar of peanut butter. So he brings it out and he starts eating it, and she makes a comment kind of in passing a little bit about Celia being allergic to it, and he's like, Cecilia? Oh no, have I been saying her name wrong this whole time? We're sticking with it. Celia. Sorry if that... Sorry. Who cares? You're not here for professionalism. He's like, dude, what are you talking about? Celia's not allergic to peanut butter. When I was reading that the first time, I said, she's not allergic to peanut butter? What is happening right now? And he says this with a laugh, right? Because he's like, oh my God, you're so crazy. What are you talking about? She's not allergic. Ha 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 ha. I'm not sure why he would laugh about that, but he's weird. So he's having a little giggle fest about this. So much so that his wife wakes up and hears this. And so she comes to the living room. I said the party in my head. She comes to the living room. She's like, what the is happening right here? And like completely berates her husband for being up so late. And then once he leaves, Millie's like trying to be reassuring. She's like, no, it wasn't anything between us. Like nothing happened. And Nina like scoffs off the idea of like, okay, yeah, like that would even happen in the first place. Like, shut up. And tells Millie to clean up the mess. And then she goes to bed, right? In response to this, after Nina leaves, Millie picks up the glass, like the glass of water that she had been drinking, and throws it like as hard as she can on the ground, and it like shatters. And she cleans it up. And I'm like, what? She heard him laughing in the other room. And you're going to tell me that they don't hear glass shattering? What do you mean? Talk about like, whatever, right? Again, just stupid all the way around. A couple days later, there's a PTA gathering, and the PTA meeting is at the Winchester house. And so Nina is running around like frantically trying to get everything set up and go and buy everything and just get it all situated. And of course, she is taking it all out on Millie about how not put together everything is. And she's given her this like crazy long laundry list of tasks to do. And once she gets it done, the second that she is finished with the list, right, she thinks that she can breathe a sigh of relief. She opens the back door, and all of the patio furniture is dirty, and she has to clean all of that now. And so she starts to cry a little bit because she's so overwhelmed and time is running out, and she's just like been running ragged this entire day. Andrew swoops in. He sees what's happening, and he offers to help her and says that he'll go and pick up one of the things, like the like appetizers pretty much for the PTA meeting. He's like, don't worry, I'll at least take that off of your list. Let me go pick that up for you so you can deal with all of this stuff, right? And when he does, he asks Celia to come with him and tells her to go upstairs to grab something so that they can go together. And Millie makes a comment to him, and she's like, oh my God, you're so good with Celia, and you guys look so much alike. It's like so adorable. He says, she's not my daughter. I met Nina when she was just a baby, but like, she's not like my kid, but I love children and I want to have my own someday. And I want so many of them. And in her head, she's thinking about how Nina was talking about them going to the like fertility specialist and whatnot. Once we cut to the PTA meeting in the next chapter, we're on chapter 15, by the way, or 16, by the way, in case you were curious. We're at the PTA meeting, having fun in the backyard. Except Nina's being a total beezy, making Millie stand the entire time and run around and cater to all the women. And anytime anybody makes any type of comment, she's like, oh my God, if only I had good help around here. It would be so much better if only I had good help around here. And just like is eyeing like daggers to Millie. It's like so crappy, right? The way that she treats her. And then yells at her when she calls her Nina. And she's like, I told you to call me Mrs. Winchester. Because she's trying to like flex on these hoes. And she makes, again, like they're just having the little mom talk, right? So they're talking about everything, and she ends up telling the girls about how her and Andrew are trying for a child. Everybody congratulates her, and they're all like really, really positive and kind to her. But when she steps to go inside to go to do something, all of the women, these backstabbing beesies, all start talking mad crap. And so Millie is over here in the corner listening to all of this and hearing them all just like completely berate her, talking about how like she's gained so much weight and how she had a stint in a psychiatric hospital, and how she needs to do everything that she can to keep Andrew because they signed like an ironclad prenup. And that Andrew never legally adopted Celia. So, like, if they get a divorce, she's not going to have anything to her name at all, and, like, no rights to anything or child support or anything. So they're like, yeah, they better work really hard. And also, for her to, have all of these issues and blah, 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 and then she goes around hiring a pretty maid to work for her, is she stupid? Like, these just C words, bro. I don't even use the C word very often. A whole bunch of see you next Tuesdays. Whole bunch of them. So, cut to. Nina and Andrew are off to their appointment with the fertility specialist. And while they're there, Millie is watching the daughter. She makes a sandwich for her, per her request, per the little girl's request. She makes it. Homegirl throws it on the ground, and before she can say anything about it, Andrew and Nina return, very much looking like they were just crying and that the meeting obviously did not go very well. Nina storms upstairs, Celia gets sent to her room, and we're left with just Andrew and Millie in the kitchen, and Andrew opens up to her about how they are not able to have any children, how Nina can't have any more children, that there's like some issues going on there. And so he says, hey, to cheer her up, can you check like dates, see when she's free, and book us some tickets to a Broadway show that's playing like in the city? Like, maybe we'll go and do that, and that'll make it good. And he again apologizes to Millie for how Nina treats her, and again reassures her that Nina is appreciative of the help and like of everything that she's doing, right? And so later that night, Millie's trying to go to bed, and she hears crashing and yelling and screaming coming from Andrew and Nina's bedroom. And so she heads downstairs to investigate. And by investigate, I mean she goes and stands outside of their bedroom door and just like, puts her little ear up to it just to kind of snoop and see what's going on. And she overhears Nina yelling and screaming at Andrew. And she's like, and I know that you wish that I were gone and that like I wasn't here anymore because I can't give you any more kids. And like blah, 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 blah. And in the middle of yelling about this, she yanks open the door and sees Millie standing there. Awkward. Yells at her, tells her to go back upstairs, but she's worried because she's like, I don't know if she hurt Andrew. And then luckily she hears Andrew in the bathroom. She's like, okay, good. She didn't kill him. What? And so then she goes upstairs to go back to minding her own business. And don't get me wrong, it's very serious. Yes, women can hurt men. Yes, like blah, blah, blah. There's like domestic problems. I'm not saying she was wrong for getting involved in it. I'm just saying that her motivations for getting involved in it seemed awfully sketchy. You know what I mean? It didn't really seem like she was down there to check for the well-being of the people. It felt like she was down there because her boyfriend might have got hurt. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was just kind of not a good look. And so the next morning, Millie's cleaning and Nina comes downstairs and she looks a little frazzled, but for the most part, she looks like back to normal, and she's just like going on about like nothing happened. So Millie asks her, hey, when are you going to be available to go to this whole show thing? And Nina's thrilled, right? She's so excited for this and tells her to book tickets for a week from Sunday. Okay, easy enough. That's what she's going to do. Andrew comes downstairs, very lovingly greets Nina and says goodbye to her for the day as he goes to work. And Millie, upon seeing this and knowing the fight that they had last night and just the way that Nina is a monster and been treating her and like everybody so monstrously, is incredibly like envious. And she's like, I wish that I had Nina's life. Like, if I was her, I would never act that way toward Andrew. Like, I can't imagine treating my husband in such a way after all he does for her, and like blah, 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 right? Like, just like this festering like jealousy and like contentment for Nina, also resulting in some more kind of internal sexual frustration And so later that day, when a package comes and she goes to pick it up, like she goes outside to pick up said package and she sees Enzo, she tries to flirt with him, tries to put some moves on him. And he is like disgusted by it. He is like, no. And then he, again, in like broken English, tells her like, get out. It's dangerous. And she's too peeved off about getting turned down that she like completely ignores this warning. Like she is like so in her own feelings about this situation that she's like not even like registering, again, all of the red flags and everything going on. Okay, that's fine. So she, the day is still the same day. She goes to pick up Celia from some tap dancing class, and she's just like really mulling over this rejection from this guy. And she's kind of like in her feelings about it, and she has a headache over all of this. And while she's waiting for Celia to get out of this class, she's waiting around with a couple other women. One of the women is a fellow nanny, and she recognizes, Millie's discomfort, and she offers her an Advil. They get to chit-chatting a little bit, and when Millie reveals that she works for the Winchesters, this girl's got some gossip, right? And so she says, hey, yeah, Nina was in a psychiatric hospital. She's like, well, do you know why? She says, yeah. Nina tried to kill Celia when she was a baby. Nina had drugged her, threw her in the tub with running water, and then took a bunch of pills herself. Oh, that's casual conversation for waiting outside of a tap dancing class. Yeah. And then I'm just, okay. And with that, like, revelation, she remembers the medication that she saw in the bathroom medicine cabinet and Enzo's warning, and she's like, oh, like putting these pieces together in her head of like, oh, maybe this is a dangerous situation. But at this point also, she's like, I can't leave though. Like, this pays so well and I don't have anything saved up. So I'm just going to have to like walk on eggshells and just be really careful and just like keep saving money. Keep saving money. What are you spending money on? They feed you. You got a roof over your head. They've got the cell phone paid for. You've been working here for over a month. I'm not saying they're in like New York City, right? Like, this isn't like enough money to like keep for very long, but like, I don't know, man. Just a bad situation all the way around, right? And so we go into chapter 21, and it's dinner time, same day. That's a crazy thing too. The pacing of this book is crazy because it'll be like weeks at a time will go by between chapters, or like you'll have a whole entire week in one chapter, or sometimes you'll have 5 chapters to talk about a single day. I don't know. It's all over the place in that regard, but she's trying to move the cardboard box that she got earlier from the porch, right, that Enzo had brought in for her. And she's in the middle of moving it when Andrew comes down, sees that it is from his mother, opens it up, and it's a bunch of baby clothes. And this really, really breaks his heart because they had just found out the news from the fertility clinic that Nina's unable to have children. At some point, they must have told his mom that they were planning on having another child, and so she sent a bunch of the stuff. And it's just like a big slap in the face to him about how he's not going to have this dream of his. Millie tries to comfort him, saying that maybe the doctor was wrong, but Andrew reveals that Nina's a little bit older than him and that she had issues when they first got married, which is why they waited so long to try. And so she's like, okay, so maybe this is him talking about the whole psychiatric thing. And she's like, okay, well, if you ever want to talk about anything, I'm here for you. And he squeezes her hand, and there's like this like tension moment between them, and there's like sparks. Gross. And so he goes to he takes his hand away, and he goes to leave the room and go and, deal with his emotions elsewhere. But before he disappears up the stairs, he gives her one long, lingering look. Chill. That's so gross. That's so icky. Icky. I hate this. And this long, lingering look that they share leads her to avoid him for an entire week, like keeps her distance, at least tries to be respectful and not like add drama to this like situation. However, the upcoming weekend is when Andrew and Nina were supposed to go to the city to go to the Broadway show. Turns out Nina ends up confronting Millie, and she's like, oh my God, you stupid girl. No, I can't do that because that's when I have to take Celia to this camp thing over the weekend that she has to go to, and you got the dates mixed up, and now you booked this and you wasted our money, and this is coming out of your paycheck. Blah, 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 blah. Completely rages. and then has Nina carry the bags out to the car for Celia and Nina to go to this like excursion outdoors camp. Sorry, I don't know why that word like escaped my brain so badly right there. And the bags, she notes in her head, are like really unusually heavy for a weekend trip. Like this is just kind of like off or whatever, you know, but she brings them out there, gets them situated, and they go to leave. When they leave, now we are left for the weekend with just Andrew and Millie in the house. Can you imagine what happens next? So Andrew says, hey, I just wanted to let you know we're not actually going to take the money out of your paycheck, and I didn't cancel the tickets like I told her I did. I kept them and you should take them. Like you and a friend should go to the city and like go and take the weekend off and, you know, go to this Broadway show. And she's like, well, I don't have any friends. And so they end up going together. Of course they freaking do, right? And the chapter ends with Millie sitting there thinking about how, like, she has this foreboding feeling that if she goes, something bad will happen. I'm like, why do you have to tell us that? Again, Frida McFadden, why are you spelling that out for us? You could just, like, describe a feeling in her gut, but instead you tell me explicitly, literally, that it's like, if I go, something bad will happen. So, hey, guess what, guys? When she goes, something bad happens. Like, what the there's literally nothing left of the imagination in this entire freaking book. And so Millie doesn't have an outfit for this type of event, right? Again, out of prison. She doesn't have much. And so she ends up going through that bag of clothing that she got from Nina and finds a white dress. And it's beautiful. It fits her like a glove. And she puts it on and she goes downstairs and Andrew sees her and like jaw on the ground. Dude like cannot take his eyes off of her. And as he's driving them into the city, he literally just like keeps glancing at her the entire time and she's clocking it. And she knows that Nina would hate this, like if Nina knew that this was happening, but she's like, there's no way that Nina would ever find out though. Like, who cares? This is fine. Like, let me just like enjoy the night. And so they go to the theater. She is amazed and excited. Again, went to prison when she was 17 years old and didn't really come from a like ritzy background to begin with, right? Like she was definitely like lower middle class. And so this Broadway show, this like fancy hotel that they're in, these rich cars, you know, the tuxedos, the dress that she's in. This is like a completely new experience. They go to this really bougie restaurant. They have wine. She's like, oh my God, this is a first for her, right? And she is completely just baffled by the extravagance of it all. And Andrew is like seeing it for the first time through her eyes, right? Because for him, this is just like a Tuesday, right? This is just like a regular schmegular day. It's like whatever. He wears suits and stuff all the time. Like you just kind of get blinded to it once you like that stuff is normal to him, right? And so he's seeing it for the first time again through her eyes, and it's just this like really beautiful moment between them. And the show is amazing and everything is amazing. And at the dinner, you know, she makes a comment about how much of a gentleman that Andrew is, and he's like, yeah, you know, my mom raised me to be one. And there's some little tension, flirty, buildy stuff happening. And in the middle of dinner, Nina calls him to berate him about something. And once he puts the phone down, he confesses that he doesn't know how his marriage came to this and how she used to be a completely different person. And he also makes mention about how he was engaged to someone right before he met Nina and had married her. And Millie wonders if Nina had broken up that relationship, which is kind of a weird thing to wonder. And then an even weirder thing to come up is Andrew says that he and Nina haven't had sex since the appointment with the fertility specialist. And this is something that just Millie cannot get out of her head for the rest of dinner. She just cannot stop thinking about boning Andrew, right? I don't know why else he would have said it, right? That was kind of the implication there. And so they end up, their intent was to drive back home. They drank a little bit too much wine, so that ended up not happening. And so they end up booking a hotel room. They hop in the taxi cab to go to the hotel. They did book 2 separate rooms. However, in the cab ride over, he's just staring at her and he makes a comment about how beautiful she is. And the cab like hits a bump or hits a turn too hard and ends up like flinging her on top of him. And then they end up making out. Don't look at me like that. I don't know. So obviously they end up sleeping together. Is anybody really surprised about this? When they wake up the next morning, Millie kind of has the realization I mean, it's not even a realization because she knows, right? She's not blind to the fact. She knows that, like, he's not going to leave his wife for her. But she's also realizing, oh, crap. Nina had a late night request where she told me to make sure that I had taken the trash cans out to the curb. We obviously didn't make it home last night to be able to take out the trash. And now I'm going to get caught in this lie, you know, this whole thing. So she starts getting a little freaky outy about that on top of just, I don't know, kind of having that weird achy feeling of like, wow, this is never going to happen, you know? And so they end up talking to each other about it. And they're like, yeah, it was a great time, but this it can never happen again. But he's like, I'm not sorry about it though. Okay, cool. Like, I guess. So they drive home. She tells Andrew about the whole trash thing. It ends up that like he offers Enzo $200 to take the trash bags out and like throw it into his work truck and like dispose of them elsewhere. I don't know. It's just a thing. Ends up like Andrew talks to her about how he doesn't really like Enzo very much, and that he spends like way too much time in their yard and he's just not a fan of the guy, but Nina refuses to let him fire him. Okay, so that's kind of odd, but they go back in the house and they get situated and go on about their day, trying to get back into the groove of things. And that afternoon, Nina returns. When she gets there, she's talking to Millie and she says, hey, why did nobody pick up the phone when I called at 11 o'clock last night? So she fibs, right? She lies and she's like, oh, I was asleep and I don't know, Andrew might have been out or something. Okay. She's like, okay, fine. Well, I'll make sure I ask Andrew about it. And so in that moment, Millie decides that she's going to text Andrew a heads up about the question coming to make sure that they have their story straight. The next chapter, it is just a week kind of full of like awkward tension because her and Andrew are like meticulously trying to avoid each other and not like cause any suspicion or whatever. And there ends up being a point where they run into each other, quite literally like turn a corner and run into each other, and causes her or Andrew to drop a glass. It shatters on the floor. They're in the middle of cleaning it up and they're like in close proximity and are going to talk maybe a little bit. And then Nina comes in, kills the moment. And Nina and Andrew go to leave the room and Andrew kind of like leans over to her and he's like, hey, we've got some stuff to talk about. Okay, weird. And later at dinner, she's serving it up and everything. And Nina begins to compliment the food. She's like, oh my God, this is like so good. You have like such a good, you know, you're such a good cook, you know. Is this kind of like the food that they served you in prison? Was the prison food that you had like this? Huh. Andrew understandably looks horrified because he had no idea about her past. And Millie tries to kind of play it off or ignore it or whatever because she's like, oh my God, like I had no idea Nina knew about me going to prison either. This is like incredibly awkward. So she just kind of like and makes her escape upstairs and tries to like avoid the entire situation. And when she gets upstairs, on top of her bed is a copy of the playbill from the Broadway show that she had gone to. Well, they had gone to, and she had kept it in her wallet. So Nina had gone through her stuff and found out about her going to the play with Andrew. And like, if she knows that, she also, about the whole 11 o'clock phone call thing, she might also know that they had gone to this hotel together. Oh no. But despite all of this, despite this confrontation, despite this concern, Millie cannot stop thinking about Andrew, who she is now convinced that she is in love with. You know, one prolonged conversation and sleeping together later, and she's just madly in love with this man. But ever since Nina revealed that she had been in prison, he hasn't like sought her out or tried to talk to her or anything since then. And in the meantime, Nina has continued to make her life even worse, like even more hellish of an experience. And on another late night where she's unable to sleep, she goes downstairs to get some water and she looks out onto the back porch and she sees Andrew sitting out there. So she decides to join him and they have a little bit of chit chat. You know, she apologizes to him for not telling him about her past and how she just wanted to like put it behind her and not deal with it. And he says he understands. And then she also goes on to be like, you know, hey, that night that we had at the play, though, that was seriously like the best night of my entire life. He says that, you know, yeah, I haven't felt that happy in like such a long time, but I can't do this. And so she's like, okay. So she leaves. And when she goes to go upstairs, she runs right into Nina. And Nina asks Millie if she has seen Andrew. She says that he's on the back porch, but of course she lies and says that she didn't talk to him. And then chapter 33, Millie has Sundays off, right? And so on this particular Sunday, she's out running around doing, whatever. And when she gets home, she turns on the light in her bedroom. And when she turns it on, Nina was sitting there in the dark with the pile or like bag of clothing that she had given to Millie. And Nina says, "What the F are you doing with my clothes? You stealing stuff from me now? Like, what is that all about?" And they get in this like really, really heated confrontation. And she's like, "You literally gave them to me." And it gets to the point where Andrew steps in. He like hears the commotion and comes in and he says, "Hey babe, seriously, like you were going to donate those clothing. Like, I don't know what you're talking about or why you're yelling at her in this way. Like you're acting ridiculous right now." And he ends up asking Millie to leave the room so he can talk to Nina. Maybe they're not in her room. Maybe it was in the living room or something. I don't know. I don't care to look again. But he asks Millie to leave. And so he talks to Nina. Obviously, Millie doesn't actually leave because she's just a little eavesdropper. And so she's like outside of the door, like, cupped to the door to be listening to what's going on. And Andrew is telling her, like, "Hey, you've changed. You're no longer this person that I fell in love with. Like, I want to separate. And, I need to admit that, like, I do have feelings for Millie." Nina goes on to like threaten to take him to court, and he reminds her pretty quickly about the prenup and that she never allowed him to adopt Celia. So they get in this big blowout fight, and he like kicks Nina out. And so Millie rushes downstairs to apologize to Andrew. I don't know what about exactly, but she just goes down there to apologize to him and be like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." I guess she's apologizing for making his marriage fail or whatever. And he's like, "No, it's not your fault." And so they end up, this is crazy. They end up like standing together, kind of like holding each other, watching Nina pack her shit and leave the house. Hello? And so then on the way out, she whispers to Millie and she's like, "I'll never forget this." Uh-oh. I think Celia is still at the camp thing. She was there for like a whole week. I think Nina was like drove up there to drop her off and stayed the night and then drove back the following day. And so Celia is safe out doing God knows what or whatever, okay? That's the context here. So she's gone. I don't know. She got kicked out. She's doing whatever. Now Andrew and Millie are in the house alone together, admitted their feelings, having this like public, not even public, I guess really, but like in the house thing. They're just being like open about it, They sleep together. They sleep in his bed. She wakes up and wakes up next to him, and he tells her that he wants to give them a real shot. And he's like, "I don't want you to be my maid anymore." He goes to leave the room to like make them breakfast and stuff. And she starts getting all these weird phone calls from a blocked number. She obviously continues to ignore it because she's like assuming that it's Nina. She goes downstairs to meet with Andrew, and she sees him like staring out of the window, and he's staring at Enzo, and he's pissed off that the gardener is there so early in the morning. And also he's like, "You know what? I'm fed up with this Enzo guy, and I've been wanting to fire him forever, and I only ever kept him around for Nina." And so he ends up opening the door, telling Enzo that he's fired, okay? Enzo's super chilled about it. He says, "Okay, yes, sir." Andrew, leaves. He goes back upstairs to go and do whatever. Like, after Andrew is out of earshot, he, like, leans into Millie and tells her that she needs to leave the house immediately and that she is in an incredible amount of danger. He says this in perfect English, by the way. Perfectly fluent English, or just like, "Hey, no, seriously, like, you have to get the out of here." And she's like, "I thought you didn't speak English." Do you know how horrifying that would be, dude? Oh my God. And he goes on to like try to quickly explain that like Nina's not the problem. Nina's not the danger. I know you think you're safe now because she's gone, but blah. And then it gets interrupted because Andrew starts to call for her from the other room. And so he has to skedaddle. Oh, okay. And so chapter 35, she's going on about her life, right? As the new wife, a step-in wife situation going on here. She's grocery shopping and she keeps getting phone calls from this blocked, no, I guess it's not a blocked number. Why did I say that earlier? Like a unknown number, you know what I'm saying? Like the weird unknown spammy calls. And while she's grocery shopping, she runs into one of the PTA moms who is like at that little party thingy majiggy that had gotten thrown, and recognizes her. And so they're having a little bit of a talk back and forth, and she asks where Nina is because she didn't show up to like this brunch thing that they had scheduled. Tells her kind of a little bit about what's going on, And then the mom says, oh, hey, by the way, Nina had installed a tracking app on your phone. Like, she was telling us about it so that she could always like keep tabs on you. Hello? And so Millie's like, oh my God. So she did know that we stayed at the hotel. Like, that's how she found out about it. Like, she was like, stalking me essentially, right? And so she leaves to try to get home as fast as she can. And when she goes out there, she sees a car that looks just like Nina's in the parking lot. And so she's like, oh shit, I'm getting like actively stalked. And then she gets even more phone calls from this weird number. And she picks it up this time, but this time it genuinely is a spam caller. And it's just like weird bad vibes the entire way around, right? And so we go into this is chapter 36. It's nighttime. She's making dinner for her and Andrew for when he comes home, but he's running late and it's a little stormy outside. And she gets another one of those weird phone calls and she picks it up this time. And this time there's like a distorted voice on the other end that says, stay away from Andrew Winchester. In response to this weird phone call, she decides that she's fed up with Nina and she's like, okay, fine. Tomorrow, I'm changing all of the locks and I'm going to go and pack up the attic and I'm moving downstairs. Like, I'm going to officially be, part of the main house area. As she's packing up her stuff in the attic, Andrew comes home, sees what she's doing, and he thinks that it's a great idea, but he mentions how he had seen one of his or a couple of his books on the coffee table because he's like, hey, were you reading or something? Like, because she was home alone all day, right? She was just trying to pass some time. She's like, yeah, I was flipping through some of them. And yeah, I've been reading all day. And, goes on to talk about how exhausted she is from just, I don't know, packing or something. And he's like, oh, don't worry, baby. I'll make sure that you forget everything about today. And she's like, oh my God. So of course this turns into them boning, and they decide to do it in the attic on the bed in the attic. She passes out almost immediately after, falls asleep and stuff. And she ends up waking up at 3:00 in the morning and she needs to use the restroom, and she realizes that she's alone. Andrew's not there with her. And when she goes to open the door, she finds herself locked inside. And that is the end of part 1. There are, just in case you were curious, there are 3 parts to the book and 61 chapters. So part 1 is the really, really big chunk that we just got through. Look at us. When we go into, sorry, I'm trying to keep this together right now. When we go into part 2, we are from Nina's POV. Yeah, I know, cliffhanger, we'll unpack it later, okay? So she's in a hotel all by herself and she is looking through her phone, and we get verification that yes, she was in fact tracking Millie's location through the iPhone TM. And it got turned off that afternoon. And so she's coming to this realization, and she pulls out, hold on, I said that I wasn't going to redirect. I wasn't going to redirect quotes from this book, but I feel the need to for this particular part because this is pretty funny. So it's not funny, haha, funny oh my God type of thing. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so she puts her phone down, she gives up on tracking Millie, and she's thinking to herself, I can't believe I finally got rid of that asshole. And so she pulls out a photo of Andrew, pulls out a lighter, flicks it, lights the photo on fire, and I smile. My first real smile in almost 8 years. I can't believe I finally got rid of that asshole. And then there's a page break, line break thing into the next, sequence of events. How to get rid of your sadistic, evil husband, a guide by Nina Winchester. Step 1, get knocked up by a drunken one-night stand, drop out of school, and take a crappy job to pay the bills. Hey, so if you were curious about how she and Andrew met, we literally just got an info dumped to us in a matter of 4 lines, which is honestly breakneck speed. I can't talk. Breakneck speed, exposition dumping, or whatever. So yeah, I'm going to tell it to you again, out of, not out of sequence necessarily out of the story, but in a way told differently. I'm going to pace it differently to you to make it objectively more interesting because the way this story is told boggles my mind, okay? So this whole guide thing leads to her giving us, as the reader, a recap of their entire relationship. So as stated, in college, she had a drunken one-night stand, ended up getting pregnant, decides to keep the baby, and drops out of school. She goes ahead and gets a job to try to support herself and the child, but said job only provides 2 weeks of paid maternity leave and then like 10 weeks of unpaid. Completely worthless to her as like a struggling single mother, right? So she ends up going back to work after the 2-week period, and her boss is a complete douchebag. Because of course he is. Because yet again, God forbid, we have one singular likable character in this entire book, okay? So she freshly popped out a baby, goes back to work, dealing with this asshole boss. There is a little bit of back and forth between her and homeboy. Andrew is, of course, the CEO of the company, and she's always had a crush on him because he's just this, gorgeous, runs the place man. In which case, yet again, not to like continually reference my own videos and like self-promo or like whatever the frick you want to call it, but what was it? The Dreamland Billionaire Romance, something by Lauren Asher. Oh no. How am I going to remember the name of the series but not the name of the book? Whatever. The Temu grandson Disneyland billionaire dumbass romance that I read a couple of months ago now, gave me that vibe. What do you mean you're falling for this CEO that is directly responsible for maintaining the work benefits that are screwing you over? Couldn't be me. Could not be me. You're going to have a crush on a billionaire homie with way too much money? Couldn't be me. I'm just saying, like, this shit pisses me off so badly, dude. But it's fine. He white knights his way into her bed, right? He, like, defends her to her boss, takes her out to lunch one day and then invites her to dinner. And she's like, oh, I can't go to dinner with you. I have a baby. And he's like, oh, don't worry. My mother loves children. She'll babysit. Like, come on a date with me. And she immediately agrees to it. Keep in mind, she, in this moment, like in this scene that I'm describing to you, is still actively breastfeeding, is like still actively a very, 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 very new mother, and is like handing her baby child over to this random woman. And while I understand there are, external circumstances that certain mothers are put in that like you don't have a choice in doing so because you have to take care of your baby. You know what I mean? Like, you have to go to work to support your child, so sometimes you have to put your child into childcare. I'm not judging that in any way. Obviously, I'm not talking about people that have to do that. I'm talking about a woman that willingly hands her child over to a random ass woman to go on a date. Like a not vetted, not whatever, just to go on a date with a guy. No judgment. Again, I don't know. Hey, not me. Never been in that situation. Never will be. Couldn't be me. So maybe I need to, withhold my judgment. But also, I would rather do a lot of things than ever put my child in any care of a stranger, right? Like a completely unvetted stranger. Just, here you go. Here's my little baby girl. Have fun while I go and do God knows what. So anyway, sorry, that's like such a side tangent. So goes on this lunch, goes to this dinner date, whatever. He's watching the kid. And obviously she gets swept off of her feet. Obviously. It's like love at first sight and love at first, dinner purchase. And she's like, oh my God, he spoils me so. And almost immediately they get married. And she, there's like no red flags. He's literally like such a perfect man, and she can barely like wrap her mind around any of this. Like, he's literally so perfect. And I have a quote pulled that I wanted to read. What is chapter 39? From the night of our magical first date, he made his intentions clear to me. He was looking for a serious relationship. He had been engaged before, a year earlier, to a woman named Kathleen, but it hadn't worked out. He was ready to get married. He was willing to take on both me and Celia. As if that's not a red flag. As if that's not a red flag. Hey, I get it. Again, yet again. I want to be very, very clear. I'm not judging people in general. I'm just judging this particular woman in this particular situation, okay? And just in general, I guess some general advice. She is getting the shit loved bombed out of her. Like, this man is coming in so hot, so above and beyond of, like, you know, Prince Charming saving the day. Let me take care of you. Let me take care of your baby. You don't have to work anymore. Let me support you. Like, blah, 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 blah. Red flags all around. And we'll talk about it a little bit more in a minute. And I'm not going to diatribe you in the middle of a thriller book, but don't ever rely on a person. Don't ever do that. This is, again, out of my lane as a book reviewer, YouTuber, but this, like, trending, you know, stay-at-home girlfriend, trad wife stuff is so scary to me, to be so reliant on somebody and to not have an exit plan in case stuff goes sideways. It terrifies me, and it terrifies me to see young women idolizing it and these women, like, portraying it as this, like, dream lifestyle when it can, like, get out of hand and get to a very, very horrifying situation so quickly, which is what we're about to get into literally in the next, like, couple of chapters. Like, the next couple of chapters are the literal exact reason of, like, why you should never be completely dependent on, like, one particular person. And it's just so scary. And so, chapter 39, all she's doing is talking about how amazing he is. He's got a stable job. He's caring. He's an involved father with Celia. And really, the only holdup is that his mom is kind of a beezy, right? She's very cold and standoffish, and she constantly critiques Nina's parenting of Celia. But other than that, like, everything is great. And so she tries to be the perfect wife. She wears white all the time because Andrew loves it. She begins lightening her hair and keeping it this, like, blonde color because he loves it. You know, she takes, like, extra cooking classes and she finds all these recipes, and she's just literally trying to be, like, the epitome of, like, a trophy, stay-at-home, perfect wife, right? 3 months into the marriage, he makes a comment about how her roots are showing because she had missed a hair appointment. She was distracted with the kid, distracted with being, you know, the home, like, caretaker person, tells him that she had missed an appointment. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's so crazy. Hey, by the way, up in the attic, there's some files that I need to go find. Can you help me come and track them down? She's like, an attic? I didn't even know we had one of those. So they go up there. He ends up locking her in the attic. She realizes she's locked in there, begins freaking out, looks around. There's the cot, there's the fridge, the window painted shut, and she begins freaking the ever-loving F out and gets a little bit claustrophobic that she is stuck in this room. She continues yelling. He is non-responsive, and he eventually tells her through the door that she is locked in there until she learns her lesson, or that he has locked her in there so that she can learn a lesson. And this is where I would just like to remind you, listener, viewer, that viewer listener discretion is advised. Everything that is about to come out of my mouth for the next 20 chapters is what makes this book a thriller. It's what makes this book horrific and gross and graphic and not a fun read, okay? So this is your, like, secondary heads up about what's about to happen. Yet again, feel free to tap out at any point if you need to. No hard feelings. I love you so much. Protect your peace, okay? So, chapter 40. He continues to leave her in there. She is, like, scratching at the door, hence the, like, marks that Millie had seen that day. She's pounding on it. She's screaming and everything. And Andrew, yet again, comes to the door, speaks to her through it, and tells her that he is punishing her for looking like a slob and that nobody can hear her because it's soundproofed. And she doesn't stand a chance and that she is never going to get out. Like, she's stuck there until she learns her lesson, right? And also that Evelyn, his mother, is watching Cece. So there's nothing to worry about. Don't worry, my mom's got her. And we'll circle back to that fact a little bit later, okay? And he also says, you know, hey, Nina, by the way, you're locked in here to learn your lesson. And in order to show me that you have learned your lesson, you have to pluck out 100 strands of your hair, your dirty, nasty hair that is not, you know, well maintained, that your roots are showing and you look like a slob. Pick out 100 strands of that hair, a follicle intact, and give them to me. And that's how I'll know that you learned your lesson. You have until I come home from work. And then he goes and, like, disappears. She's left with 3 tiny bottles of water stuck in this room. doing this task. So she does. Spends the entire day plucking out her hair. When he returns from home, she gives him the hair. He says that she is short by 1 and she has to do it again. Leaves her in there overnight. She does it again. This time she plucks out 110 hairs to be safe. He accepts it. He says that she did great. He gives her water and a bagel and opens up the door and lets her out. Even carries her to bed. And his voice is so kind and gentle, I start to wonder if maybe I imagined the whole thing. After all, he's been such a good husband. Would he really lock me up in a room and make me pull out my hair? That doesn't sound like something he would do. Maybe I just have a fever and this is all a horrible hallucination. And so he, again, carries her to bed, tucks her in, tells her to get some rest while he takes care of Cece. Okay? In chapter 42, right, she went to bed. She wakes up to the sound of running water, which is kind of weird. And she grabs her phone and sees that it's early morning and there's a bunch of text messages from Andrew that are like very, very concerned and like trying to check in on her and trying to get a hold of her. And she doesn't understand what's happening. And she's really, really dizzy and she's not feeling good. And so she gets up and she's able to like crawl her way into the bathroom. When she gets in the bathroom, the bathtub is running. Cece, the little baby, is in the bath, passed out. The water is filling around the child. Like, she's able to crawl over to the tub, grab Celia, and in that moment, police bust through the door and start talking about how they made it there just in time. And the paramedics, the cops, whatever, they're able to gather the child, and the ultimate consensus is that she drugged herself and her child to do like a whole self-unaliving situation. Okay. That escalated so incredibly quickly. And so in chapter 43, she, because of like this situation and because of the way that the situation was painted, spent 8 months in a psychiatric hospital, and she has no memory of this situation at all. But what she is told repeatedly is that she was prescribed sedatives by the family doctor, and that she had taken the sedatives and had given some to Celia and had tried to do the whole unaliving herself and her baby, right? Absolutely horrible. The doctor at the hospital goes on to say that she's suffering from delusions and depression, and, maybe that's why she thought of this whole attic situation, but how none of this is true, and she starts some medication for this, and she really just, starts to believe that this is what happened, right? Because, again, her husband is so kind and sweet and takes care of her, and why would he ever do such a thing? And, this is so horrible. Why would she ever even begin to feel this way, right? It doesn't even make any sense. Yeah, I don't know, dude. We go into chapter 44. She is out of the hospital, and part of the agreement when she gets out is that she is not allowed to be alone with the baby. So either Andrew or Evelyn, the mom, have to be around in order for her to be around her baby, right? So she goes home, mom, mother-in-law pretty much moves in to help take care of everything. Evelyn also recommends a therapist for her to begin going to, a therapy with a psychiatrist for her to begin going to. And there's this really weird note that I never noticed before how frequently Evelyn dresses in white, which always has been Andy's favorite color on me. It suits her though. Her hair looks like it might have been blonde, but now she's just that precipice between blonde and white. Evelyn is, in general, well-preserved and flawless. And I don't know if y'all ever had to read Oedipus Rex in high school. I did, though. That was part of my reading curriculum. Anyway, Evelyn's around a whole bunch. It's the three of them taking care of the kid, whatever. This particular day, Andy and Nina go out on a date. When they come home, Evelyn says, hey, you guys left the bedroom light on, and that's super, super irresponsible. I can't believe that you would leave a light on. That's such a waste of electricity. Nina looks to Andrew. His face turns red, and he very visibly starts to kind of freak out. And she notes how important it is to him to impress his mom and be good enough for his mom, and how much of an issue that this is for him. And so she decides to take the blame, and she's like, hey, sorry, that was my bad. And it's okay, right? She does. They all kind of move on, And when we go into chapter 45, they have dinner together. And then afterwards, he says, hey, baby, you know, after the hallucinations and the delusions and all these things that you've been suffering from lately, I think it's time that you confront the attic and you come to the realization that the attic isn't what you think it is. And like the attic isn't this like, you know, big problem. And I think it would be very healthy and beneficial for you to go up there. She says, yeah, you know, it's been a while. I think you're right. I think we should go up there. They do. And this turns into yet another like really horrible abusive situation where he locks her up there and it's like really, really dark or ultra bright in said room in order to punish her for wasting electricity. And he, in this moment, like as he's like locking her up there and going through this session, we'll say, which is a really bad way to put it, but you know what I'm trying to say here, he admits that he like orchestrated the entire thing before about her delusions and hurting Celia and herself because he wanted to kind of show her what would happen if she were to ever leave on her own. And so it was like a deterrent. Oh, cool. So for this light, you know, infraction thing that she did for leaving the lights on, supposedly, which like maybe she didn't even do. Maybe it actually was him and he's just like projecting this punishment. Whatever. She's only there for a day and a half this time. And he, you know, confronts her and kind of taunts her about how she's not going to be able to tell anybody because nobody will believe her because of her, you know, past history of mental health issues and delusions and whatnot. And the chapter ends with him saying that all of this is for her own good and that he's just trying to teach her how to be a better person. Okay. Yeah. So at least in this book, you know, compared, I brought up Colleen Hoover in the very beginning intro. At least this book is like actively recognizing the downright abusive behaviors, and it is like portrayed in such a way that he is very clearly the villain, and like he is very clearly the scary part of the book, right? That somebody would treat somebody this way or treat anybody this way, but like particularly, you know, their spouse, their partner, and whatnot. And there's no questioning or delusion or anything that could possibly happen that what he's doing is bad versus other traditional romance these days that maybe walk a really, really weird line about calling abusive behavior romantic in some way, right? Or not idolizing, romanticizing controlling and abusive behaviors. This one's at least like pretty straightforward of like, this is bad. However, the way that this is introduced in the book, how do I say this? I don't want to trauma dump on the internet, right? I never do. That's never really my goal. But I do think that it's very important to bring perspective to things. So like, as somebody that was in a relationship with a really shitty, controlling person, that there are parts of Andrew that are very, like, almost triggeringly reminiscent of Andrew. He came out of the gate so fast in this book. He came out of the gate in 2 chapters of being introduced to, oh no, he is the bad guy, plot twist, to like, I met him and then he started doing this like really, 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 really horrific stuff. And at least in my experience, that's not how that works, right? It's very slow. It's very sneaky and very conniving. And it's the whole like frog boiling thing where it's like you slowly boil until like you don't know that you're being boiled alive. Like the water just kind of continually gets hotter and you don't realize until it's too late. And the way that this is portrayed in the book, it just goes from like quite literally 0 to 100, which is an inaccurate portrayal in my opinion of how these things go. And also just like, so from like a weirdly personal experience, I didn't think that it was accurate in that regard. And I felt like it kind of cheapened. I don't want to say cheapened the experience. That's disgusting to phrase it that way. But if you want a reader who has not been through it to understand these feelings and these sensations, I feel like you do kind of have to like bring it on slowly. And if you introduce it so quickly like this, they don't understand how like insidious it is and how sneaky it is. And it is so much easier for an outsider or from an outsider perspective to be like, oh my God, why didn't she just leave him? Oh my God, she didn't see the writing on the wall. She's so stupid. I can't believe she stayed with him. And it's like, that's not how it is. That's not how that works. Like that's, I don't know. It's just like really poorly done in that regard, in my opinion. And then from a like purely writing thriller mystery perspective writing opinion critique thing is there's no tension. Again, quite literally, it's just like, bam, 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 bam. Here's all these like really horrific things. I'm like, oh. I mean, yeah, it's disgusting. Yeah, it made my tummy feel weird. But like, I don't know. Maybe that's the difference between like, I love psychological thrillers. Like, I want to be scared, like deep in my core, deep in my head. I just want to be fearful. And this didn't really do that. It just kind of like grossed me out. But in like a general sense, it didn't like strike fear in me. But I don't know if that's maybe me seeking out a experience that wasn't advertised to begin with, and maybe I'm just like going into this with like a weird perspective or expectation. I don't know. Anyway, okay. And so chapter 46 is just continuing their relationship. She is consistently, no matter how perfect she tries to be, she's getting thrown into this room, and she's begging and bargaining and doing everything she can to leave the marriage. But he keeps saying no, and no matter how perfect she tries to be, there's always something that he is like punishing her for. And so instead, she decides to try to disgust him, right? Try to like repulse him. So she stops taking care of herself. She stops going to the gym, gains some weight, stops dyeing her hair, becomes like, stops hitting on him, right? Or like trying to like initiate anything in the bedroom, and just really tries to be a completely opposite person in hopes of making him not want her anymore. Also, in this chapter, it's noted about her feel of him hurting Celia. He never does he do anything to her. So I just want to make that like abundantly clear. He never does hurt said child, but this is something that she does fear. And it does end up being a driving factor of her eventually leaving said marriage, right? In the process of her trying to leave, trying to disgust him, trying to do all of this, she opens up to one of the PTA moms and she says, hey, this is what I'm going through. The PTA mom appears to be very, very sympathetic and supportive and trying to, get a game plan about how to get her out. But instead, said woman goes right back to Andrew and says, oh my God, your wife is losing her mind again. She's being delusional. This is really horrific. Because Andrew had already talked to everybody in their like immediate circles in life and whatnot, and gave them a heads up that if she ever said things like X, Y, and Z, that means that she's delusional again. And so she ends up going back to the mental hospital, to the psychiatric hospital for 2 months. And during that stay, she learns that the director of said hospital is best friends with Andrew's father. They're like golfing buddies or whatever. Awesome, right? So she ends up coming home, goes through life again, and it's all just a bunch of really, really bad stuff, except for the gardener named Enzo. He spends a lot of time at their house, and he's always planting these really beautiful flowers right outside of the windows, and he teaches Celia the names of said plants. And on one of these days, she has talked to him kind of in passing, and she has deduced that he does not speak English. He's made it clear that he doesn't speak it. It's very broken whenever they talk, whatever. And she ends up like just pouring her heart out one day, going on and on about how, she's being kept hostage and how horrible of a situation that she's in. And she looks over at Enzo after she like does all of this like, emotional dumping, looks at him, and he looks horrified. And she realizes, oh shit, he knows what I just said. Okay, so chapter 47 is just more and more continued abuse at the hands of her husband. I don't want to detail this stuff, but it's like relevant in some way. On this particular time, she is being punished for spraying too much like Febreze in a bedroom. And again, I'm pretty sure they say Febreze by name in the book. So yet again, I'm hoping that Frida McFadden, I keep wanting to say Frida Kahlo, which I don't know why it came out that way. Sorry. I keep wanting to say Frida Kahlo, but obviously not her. Frida McFadden, I really hope she got paid for shouting out all of these like brand names. You know what I'm saying? So she's up in the room being punished for spraying too much Febreze. And her punishment is being locked in the attic and having to spray herself in the eyes with pepper spray. Yikes, right? So she does so. And she goes to the window and she looks out, and Enzo is in the garden and sees her. Andrew is at work while this is happening. And so Enzo runs upstairs to the attic door. He's yelling at her through it. You know, he's trying to help her. He's like trying to find the key, asking if she knows anything. Speaks perfect English, by the way. She says, no, there's nothing you can do for me. Don't worry about it. Like, he has power. He has connections. He'll get you deported. Like, you have to leave as soon as you can. Like, don't worry about me at all, okay? And he's like, I am worried about you. Like, you don't deserve this. Like, no matter what you did, nothing you would ever do would make you deserve this. And also, if I don't see you outside tomorrow, I'm calling the cops. Okay, fine, whatever, right? Tries to get him to go away to like protect him. She ends up getting out that night because she did spray herself in the eyes. So she went through the punishment and stuff. And the next day she wakes up and Enzo is in the garden and he's there. This is the second day in a row. He doesn't usually work 2 days in a row, but obviously he did that day in order to check on her. And it's very sweet and caring of him. And so they end up talking a little bit. Again, Andrew is at work, and so it's just the two of them, and she talks to him in the garden, and he promises that he'll do whatever he can to help her get out of this situation. We go on to learn that he has a sister in Italy that was just like her, like she was in an abusive relationship, so this is something that like Enzo holds very near and dear to his heart to try to help women in this situation. And he goes on to explain that he pretends to not speak English in order to avoid the, to put it bluntly, like the horny moms and like the women that he works for that are always trying to like hit on him and stuff. He plays dumb essentially, but they go on to, you know, make a plan, right? We got to get some plane tickets, some fake documents, some money set aside in order for her to escape her husband. She puts it into 2 separate security deposit boxes. One of them gets discovered by Andrew. She finds out that Andrew knows. She rushes to Enzo to tell him, and Enzo swears that he'll end Andrew's life. But she says, hold on, I have an idea. Before we do that, I have another plan. Oh, okay. And then we cut to chapter 49, in which case my note just says, read it. Super helpful, Kaylee. Thanks. Love that. I love when I do that to myself. Chapter 49. So through all of these, I haven't been saying it, but a lot of them have started with like the steps in order to get rid of your like abusive, whatever husband of this guide that we talked about when we went into part 2. And so we're now on step 8, and this one is titled Find a Replacement. I can't pick just anyone. First of all, she has to be beautiful, more beautiful than I am, which shouldn't be hard since I've deliberately let myself go the last few years. She has to be younger than me, young enough to give Andy the children he so badly wants. She has to look good in white. He loves that color. And most of all, she has to be desperate. Then I met Wilhelmina Calloway. She's everything I wanted. The dowdy clothing she wears to her interview can't conceal how young and pretty she is. She's desperate to please me, and then the simple background check I run reveals a criminal record. I know I've hit pay dirt. This is a girl who will be desperate for a decent, high-paying job. Oh, and so Enzo is like, hey, not into that. Not into that at all, actually. Like, that's actually, like, really, really messed up that you're going to take advantage of somebody and try to put them in this like abusive, terrible situation, right? And she goes on to justify it, and she's like, no, like, you know, Millie, she doesn't have any attachments and she can escape if she wants to, and don't worry, like, I hired a private investigator to find out some more information about her. The detective tells me everything that I need to know about Wilhelmina Calloway. He tells me that she just got fired from her last job and they were close to calling the police on her. He tells me she's living in her car, and he tells me one other tidbit that changes everything. Right after I hang up with the detective, I call Millie and offer her the job. The only problem is Andy. So she like goes on this whole other diatribe, and it ends with, this will only work if 3 things happen. 1, Millie and Andy have a mutual attraction. 2, Millie hates me enough to sleep with my husband. And 3, they have the opportunity. And so that's what led into all of the absolute shenanigans that we got, the hatred, the rudeness, the like, etc., that led to them going to that play together in the city and whatnot, and like her being away for the camp thing. All of this is like premeditated and planned by Nina, right? And so when we go into chapter 50, she's in her hotel, hanging out, talking about reminiscing, sorry, about how free she is. She's finally free of this asshole. She's officially like pawned him off onto somebody else. And Enzo shows up. Because, right, when we left off in part 1, at the very end of part 1, he had just fired Enzo as well. So he shows up, they're together, they're vibing, they end up doing it. And she's telling him how she's going to leave the next day and like be able to start fresh and do all of this stuff. And Enzo says, no, like we can't leave Millie. We can't just leave her at the hands of this monster. Like that's really, really messed up. And she says, shh, babe, you don't know. You have no idea. And we go into part 3. Like, the cliffhangers are so, like, punch you in the face direct that I'm just like, again, I understand the point of cliffhangers. I get it. But also I feel like this is, I guess, like I said, direct. I don't know. It just feels like a little much. So yeah, she's like, you've got no idea. It just feels so millennial cringy to me for some reason, and I can't really pinpoint why. It's something about the transitions of these paragraphs or the parts of this book that I'm just like, ugh, I bet you thought you were hot shit when you wrote that, huh? I bet you thought you were real cool. Is that mean? It's probably mean. That's okay. So part 3, we're back into Millie's point of view, right? Like we talked about before. They had done it. They passed out in the attic, right? They did it up in the attic. She wakes up. She's alone. He's not there. It's pitch black. It's kind of weird. She reaches, kind of all around her and she can't find her phone. And so she goes over to turn light on. And when she turns the light on, there's 3 books in the middle of the floor that were not there earlier. Okay, that's kind of weird. She ends up like turning the light off and like going back to bed. Like, okay. Tries to open the door. She woke up because she had to pee. Tries to open up the door. It's not working. And so she just like goes back to bed. Okay, that's fine. Whatever. Wakes up the next morning and eventually ends up, talking to Andrew through the door, and he's saying that this is punishment for leaving his books out on the coffee table, right? Because she was home all alone that day and she had taken them out to read and left them on the table. And so this is punishment for her being messy. And her punishment is that she has to lay down and put these 3 very heavy, large books on top of her stomach and balance them there for 3 hours. And that he'll know that she's done it or not because there's a hidden camera in the room. And she's like, well, I can't do that. I have to pee. Like, what do you mean? And I said, that's the reason you can't do that? But she's like, I have to pee. And he's like, well, there's a bucket in the corner. Figure it out. You've got a bucket, you've got water, you've got a bed, figure it out. And she continues to push back in chapter 52, right? And eventually he's like, well, don't worry. Whenever you run out of water, or you get hungry enough, you'll be desperate enough to do whatever I tell you. Oh, okay. So she does it. And when she's done, he says, you were short by 1 minute. I guess you'll have to do it again. And she's like, well, I've ran out of water. Like, you have to give me more water at the very least. And he says, no, in the future, you'll figure out how to ration it and you'll get better at it. She starts to lose her mind, push back even more and fight and whatnot, like verbal, right, through the door. And he's like, well, this is better than prison, isn't it? Like, whatever you have to deal with here, like, blah, 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 blah. Looks like you're stuck. I can do whatever I want to you, pretty much, right? And goes on to, like, threaten her that, if she tries to break out or tries to act up or do anything, that he'll just call the cops and report her for stealing something from him. And obviously they'll believe him over a criminal like her. And so she's stuck. And so she ends up doing it again. She puts it back on her stomach. And this time she goes for an extra 10 minutes just to be safe. And he comes inside to let her out, trying to explain to her, hey, I had to do this to you. This was for your own benefit. I just had to teach you a lesson. Like, you had to learn how to be, like, a good person. And he asks she asks, hey, so how were you able to know that I did it for the right amount of time? Like, what do you mean you were able to see me? And he's like, oh, here, this is how. And pulls up his phone and shows her. And in that moment, she decides that she is going to execute the plan that she has been working on and playing through in her head over the last 6 hours. And she pepper sprays him in the face. And when we cut to chapter 53, we're back in Nina's POV. And Nina is over here reflecting on all of the things that she learned about Millie through her private investigator that she hired. And through the private investigator, let me pull it up. I'll read this to you, because again, this is pretty interesting stuff here. Oh, this is only 2 chapters. Oh, or 2 pages, sorry. Like a page and a half. I'll just read the entire. Oh my Jesus, will I? When I hired that private investigator to dig into Wilhelmina Calloway's past, I found some very interesting information. I had assumed that Millie went to jail for some sort of drug crime or maybe theft, but no. Millie Calloway went to jail for something entirely different. She was in prison for murder. She was only 16 years old at the time of her arrest and was in prison by 17, so it took some effort for the detective to get all of the information. Millie was in boarding school. No, not just boarding school, a school specifically for teenagers with disciplinary problems. One night, Millie and one of her girlfriends had snuck out to a party to the boys' dormitory. Millie was passing by a bedroom and heard her friend screaming for help behind the door. She entered the dark room and found one of their classmates, a 200-pound football player, forcing himself on her friend. So Millie picked up a paperweight on top of a desk and bashed the boy's head in multiple times. The boy was dead before he even got to the hospital. The detective had photographs. Millie's attorney argued that she had been trying to defend her friend who was being assaulted, but if you look at those photographs, it would be hard to argue she hadn't meant to kill him. His skull was visibly crushed. She eventually pleaded guilty to lesser manslaughter charges, given her age and the circumstances. The family of the boy was in agreement. They wanted vengeance for their son's death, but they didn't want him to be branded a rapist all over the internet. Millie took the deal because there were other incidences, things that would come to light if she had gone to trial. In grade school, she was expelled when she had gotten in a fight with a little boy in her class for calling her names. She shoved him off the monkey bars and broke his arm. In middle school, she slashed the tires of her math teacher's car when he gave her a failing grade. Soon after that, she went to boarding school. And then, even after her prison sentence, the incidences continued. Millie wasn't laid off from her waitressing job. She was fired after she smashed her fist into the nose of one of her coworkers. Millie seems like a sweet girl. That's what Andrew sees when he looks at her. He won't dig into her past the way that I did. He doesn't know what she's capable of. And here's the truth. I initially wanted to hire a maid in hopes that she would become my replacement. That if Andrew fell in love with another woman, he would finally let me go. But that's not why I hired Millie. That's not why I gave her a copy of the key to the room. And that's not why I left a bottle of pepper spray in the blue bucket in the closet. I hired him to kill... What? Sorry, I just killed it so bad. I hired her to kill him. She just doesn't know it yet. And so we go into chapter 54 from Millie's POV. Sprays him in the face with said pepper spray, right? So the blue bucket in the closet, that's the, closet to use the bathroom. The bucket in the closet to use the bathroom. And so when Nina had been tasked to pepper spray herself in the eye, I guess there was, multiple canisters of it, and she had put one of them in that bucket, assuming, kind of also knowing, that he would be too disgusted by it to actually touch said bucket. And so she hid it in there. Okay, cool. So that's where Millie got the pepper spray from. He comes in, pepper sprays him, takes his phone, locks him in there, and then accesses his phone and then turns off the lock screen features so that she will be able to continually access said phone, which is such a minor detail, but I do appreciate Frida taking the time to explain to us how she can access this without it locking out on her. But anyway, locks him in here, makes him apologize, and says that he has to balance the books on his genitals for 3 hours. She says, karma, Beezy, figure it out. After she does so, she's like looking at his phone, and there's a text message from his mom, Evelyn, asking if he is going to divorce Nina. She responds and says yes, and Evelyn, the mom, texts back and she says, "Oh, thank God. I'm so happy. I never liked her anyway, and she was so lax about disciplining Celia. You know, that's why she turned into such a brat." Okay. When we go into chapter 55, God, I love when I just have read the chapter as my note. That's so fucking helpful, Kaylee. Millie is waiting for this like 3-hour time period to pass for him to continue balancing this on him. And in the meantime, she is thinking about Nina and realizing that Nina is probably the reason that she has the pepper spray, why she has the key, and is kind of putting the pieces together that he's probably done this before to her. And she starts to wonder if Nina was ever actually jealous of her or if this was like a big setup the whole entire way anyway. And then also reflecting about, she's like, I was never understood to begin with. She's like, this isn't funny. The way that it's written is funny, not the events themselves, okay? She's like, I didn't slash my math teacher's tires because he was going to fail me. It was because he was going to fail me if I didn't let him feel me up. And I punched a coworker because he kept groping me. And even, you know, my arrest, like I was arrested because I was protecting my friend because he was assaulting her. Like, this is absolute like bull crap. And even in that moment, like, I defended my friend, but she still stopped talking to me after the incident. Like, I've never been understood. All I've ever wanted is, like, justice, like, bop, 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 right? When we go into chapter 40 or 56, Nina is picking up Celia from camp. So we're flipping, like, POVs like crazy in part 3. So Nina's picking her up. Celia looks happier than ever. And when Nina goes on to tell her, hey, we're not going home and Andrew will not be with us to this other place where we go, Celia looks so relieved. Again, happiest she's ever looked. She's so happy. And Nina is reflecting about how, yeah, maybe he never hurt her directly, but she always had the pressure to be perfect and, you know, saw how maybe I acted and I would disappear for days at a time. And so this is like a big deal for her. There's like a little bit of recognition about the secondary and tertiary effects of abuse in a household, even though it might not happen to you directly, which is not like unpacked or talked about in any way beyond that. But it was at least acknowledged in some capacity in a way that I appreciated, but not quite enough for me to say any more than that. After she picks up Celia and she's taking her back to the hotel as well, Nina gets a phone call from Enzo that says, hey, seriously, like, we have to go and help Millie. We have to pick Millie up. She hasn't left the house in 3 days and the light is on in the attic room. And like, I'm really, really worried. Nobody's answering the door. Like, we have to help her. And yet again, we are left on the funniest cliffhanger ever, where Nina says, okay, Enzo, we will, but I'm only going to return under one condition. And then again, it's like the dun, dun, dun thing that happens. And it's just like so freaking cheesy, dude. Okay, so back to chapter 55. So after this allotted time, she goes up there and he's like, hey, I waited, you know, I did it for the 3 hours. And she's like, oh, sorry, I didn't see it. You're going to have to do it again. I actually said 5. She's like, I actually said 5 hours, not 3. So it looks like you're going to have to do it again. And he's like, I can't do it again. You have to give me water. There's no water in here. Like, at least give me that. And she's like, oh, you want water? Looks like you should have left more for the girls that you trapped up here if you wanted anything left for you. Which, like, okay. I mean, I get what you're trying to say. It's, again, not funny. Not funny, haha. Funny, like, Jesus Christ. Right? Like, I get what she's trying to say. It's just, like, it's not, I don't think it's quite doing what she meant for it to do, you know? And so we cut to chapter 57. It's the next day. Millie wakes up, goes back up there. Andrew is pissed off. And so he tries to, like, ram the door, tries to get it open, and he's like, I did it, and you're just like, blah, 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 explosion, whatever. And so she ends up passing a pair of pliers under the door to him and tells him, essentially, pull a tooth out. Prove that you want to get out, pull a tooth out. At this point, he is so thirsty and so hungry that this is something that he is legitimately considering doing? And she says, oh, this is just the beginning. This is just the start of it. In which I said, how big is the crack under your door to be able to fit a pair of pliers under? We go into the last like couple chapters of the book, right? So we get left off on the cliffhanger of like being told to take the teeth out of his own mouth, which is atrocious, by the way. I'm trying to gloss over it as much as possible, but I just want you to know that internally, externally, I was like, bleh, the entire time, okay? So if you're feeling that way, I was too. Hey, you, me, we're in this together, okay? And so in chapter 58, Nina, her grand idea, I only have one condition, was leaving her daughter with another fucking stranger. He's not a stranger, I guess. And that was the deal. She was like, I'm going to leave her with you, protect her with your life. I'm going to go and deal with my husband. Are you fucking kidding me? You leave your baby child with a random woman, and then you go and leave your like 7-year-old with a random man. Maybe you've known him for 7 years. Maybe he's been looking out for you for a while. He's been respectful. He's been kind. He's been a stranger in your yard. You have seen what horrible men can do, and you just leave your child with this man. Okay, hey, that's fine. Again, hey, I know. Hey, I'm not in the situation. I don't know. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and I know my traumas in life and whatnot speak to other things, and so maybe I am just biased in I can't fathom it. Goes to the house, bangs on the door, there's no answer, it's pitch black, makes her way inside, makes her way into the attic, and in the very last chapter of the book, she opens the door to the attic, and Andrew is in the middle of the room, very clearly dead. Very clearly been dead, okay? Millie appears from behind the door with the pepper spray ready to, like, shoot at her. She goes on. She, like, reassures Millie. She's like, hey, I'm not here to report you. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm just here to, like, see what's happening, right? Andrew has been locked in this room for 6 entire days. She approaches the body. He has quite a few missing teeth and, like, blood pooled around him. And Millie goes on to talk about how scared she is of going back to prison. And Nina reassures her, tells her, hey, just get out of here, dude. Like, I hired you. She's like, pretty much like, I put you up to this. I expected this. I'll take the fall. Everybody thinks I'm crazy anyway, between the delusions and the medication and whatever. Like, whatever happens next, if it happens to me, I'm probably not going to get in trouble. So, like, just go ahead and get out of here. I'll take the fall. Millie, she doesn't need to be told this twice. She makes a run for it. So she gets going, and we go into chapter 60 of Nina calling the police, and we circle back to the prologue. If I leave this house, it'll be in handcuffs, and I can't see any other way around it. And so that's how we learn of, like, Nina's the one that's in the house. They called the cops, and the cops showed up, and they go upstairs, and they go and find Andrew, and they're like, hey, what the and she's like, I don't know what happened. I gave the maid a week off. My daughter was off at camp, so I felt like we didn't need her. I haven't seen her all week, and I've been gone. You've heard the rumors. Yeah, he like broke up with me, or like we're in the process of getting a divorce and we've been separated, and I don't know who would have been around. Like nobody would have been around. And the detective says, so you're telling me that a grown man managed to get himself locked in a room in the attic without his phone, even though the room only locks from the outside, and while he was in the room, he randomly decided to pull out 4 of his teeth? And she's like, yeah. I mean, I guess, I don't know. Like, maybe you don't know him. The detective in response goes, actually, that isn't entirely true. Nina goes, excuse me? And the detective goes on to say, I never knew him personally, but my daughter did. And it turns out, if you're not watching, I'm like twisting my hair and trying to like rip out an entire chunk of my hair. The detective is the dad of Andrew's fiance Kathleen. And so the detective knows, right? Maybe not directly, maybe not the like intimate details of the way that Andrew was abusive, but he saw the way that being in a relationship with Andrew changed his daughter. And he at least like heard enough tidbits and was able to piece enough together. He knows that this guy was a horrible, horrible, horrible man. And so chapter 60 ends with the detective saying, if you ask me, that attic is a hazard. Seems like it's far too easy to get locked up there, and it's a shame that it happened to your husband. I'm sure my buddy in the coroner's office will also agree. It'll have to be a cautionary tale, won't it? She's like, yeah, a cautionary tale. Detective Connors gives me one last long look, and then he goes back upstairs to join his colleagues, and I realize something incredible. I'm not gonna walk out of here in handcuffs after all. Hey. 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 Did we need the last two paragraphs? Sorry. Like, did we though? I feel like the things that I read to you aloud beforehand made it apparent that this dad, it was like, oh yeah, I'm protecting my daughter and these other women that have obviously been like at the hand of an abuser. Did you really have to spell it out for me that like, I'm not gonna walk out of here in handcuffs after all? Yeah, no shit. No shit. Especially going into chapter 61 from Nina's point of view, where she is attending Andy's wake at his funeral, completely like free of charges and free of all this other stuff, dude. It just makes me like, it makes me so mad in ways that like I can't really explain to you, where like I hate when authors again treat me like I'm freaking dumb. And so she's at the wake. She's dealing with talking to all of these people. None of it really matters. The only significant thing, to be honest, is his mom approaches her, Evelyn, right? This crazy, crazy woman. And she says, I always told him, wait, hold on. Let me find the entirety of this conversation. Okay. Evelyn approaches and she says, you know, I spoke to an old friend at the police station about Andy. She starts to internally like spiral. Oh, is all I can manage. Yes. They told me how he looked when they found him. Her shrewd eyes bore into me. They told me he was missing teeth. Oh God, she knows. She definitely knows. Anyone aware of the state of Andy's mouth when the police found him had to know that his death was not accidental. Nobody yanks their own teeth out with pliers, not willingly. It's all over. When I walk out of this funeral home, the police will probably be waiting for me. They will snap handcuffs on my wrists and read me my rights, and then I'll spend the rest of my life in prison. I won't tell anyone about Millie, though. She doesn't deserve to be dragged down too. She gave me a chance to be free. I'm gonna leave her out of it. Evelyn, I choked out. I don't. Her eyes drift back to her son's face, her long lashes closed forever. What? Oh, sorry. His long lashes closed forever. She purses her lips. I always told him how important dental hygiene is. I told him he had to brush every night, and when he didn't, there would be a punishment. There's always punishment when you break rules. What? What was she saying? Evelyn, if you don't take care of your teeth, she continues, then you lose the privilege to have teeth. Evelyn? Andy knew that. He knew that was my rule. She lifts her eyes. When I pulled out one of his baby teeth with pliers, I thought he understood. I stare at her, too afraid to speak, too afraid of the next words that will leave her mouth, and when they finally come, it takes my breath away. It's such a shame, she says, that he never really learned. I'm glad you stepped up and taught him a lesson. My jaw is hanging open as Evelyn makes one last adjustment to her son's white shirt collar. Then she walks out of the funeral home, leaving me behind. And then we have an epilogue. It's not funny. It's not funny. It's not funny. It's Millie she ends up getting hired by another family to be a like housemaid, and then turns out like going into the interview and into work with the woman, she's very clearly bruised, and then she's like, oh yeah, Nina recommended you. And it's like very clear that the implication is that Nina is recommending and like low-key kind of turning Millie into like a for-hire killer, or maybe she always has been. I don't know, dude. Maybe this was the plan from the beginning. It didn't really seem like it though. But it sounds like Nina is telling all of her friends Like, hey, if you want to get rid of your husband Aquatofina style, Aquatofina. If you've watched Bailey Sarian, if you've made it to the end of this, I would hope that you have, and I hope you know what I'm trying to reference here. If you want to get rid of your husband the same way I did, hire my housemaid. And I don't think Millie signed up for this, but apparently she has, because this shit is like a four series story now. I think this woman turned into a contract killer unwillingly. But I don't know, because I haven't read any of the other books, nor do I have any interest. But I will read more Frida McFadden, because this shit is crazy, and I think this is wonderful to be reading in the month of October. And that's the end of the book. That's the end of The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. Like I said, apparently good enough to get a book out of it. Don't ask me. Don't look at me. I don't know. I'm not in Hollywood. I'm not funding this crap. Don't look at me like that. I have no control over these people. But anyway, love that for us. Love that for all of us. How'd you like it? How did you like doing a thriller? This was our first thriller on the channel. Usually, again, if you're new, hey, we usually cover like romance or fiction or something like that. This is the first time we've like dipped our little toesies in this genre beyond like Colleen Hoover, which I think is like a cop-out. Like Colleen Hoover thriller, like Layla and Verity, I feel like is kind of a cop-out of the genre. But then again, I also feel like this kind of was. So what's that mean for any of us? I don't know. Did you like it? Do you want more books like, maybe not this bad, but do you want more of this? Do you have any recommendations? What kind of spooky what kind of spooky fall, autumnal books do you want to read? Do you want me to read? Do you want me to review? Do you want to hear me yap about for hours? Let me know. Comment down below. I would love to hear them. And in general, if you made it to the end of this video, just know that I am so appreciative of you. Thank you so much for listening and for watching and however you consume this. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.